Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. This was the first time I had ever experienced something like this. I'm going to tell you what happened, and you'll be shocked when you hear it. I was alone in the living room at that moment, and the whole house was quiet. Suddenly everything changed when my dog Max saw me like this. I never thought he would jump on me. But what happened in that unexpected moment both scared me and made me feel guilty. At first I thought it was just a mistake, but over time my feelings started to change. A feeling I had never experienced before began to grow inside me, and I didn't know where this would lead me. Max, our dog, had been a part of our family for years. My husband John and I got him when he was a puppy, and he had been with us ever since. But recently John's constant business trips had made being home alone feel boring. I spent days alone, frequently feeling the weight of loneliness on me. Max, on the other hand, was always loyal and affectionate. Spending time with him eased my loneliness a bit. That day was just a normal day. I finished my household chores, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat down on the couch in the living room. My mind was full of thoughts, and I was wondering why John had become so distant lately. At that moment Max came over, laid his head on my knees and looked up at me. His innocent eyes comforted me for a moment. I placed my hand on his head and stroked him, but the thoughts in my mind and the feeling of loneliness mixed together, creating a turmoil inside me. Max was his usual playful self. He snuggled up to me and his actions made me smile for a moment. However, after a while, his behavior began to change in a way I hadn't seen before. It was as if he understood me, acting as though he wanted to make me feel even more comfortable. At first, I didn't even realize what was happening, but later I started to notice how much of an effect he was having on me. At that moment, having Max by my side seemed to comfort me. But my thoughts wouldn't stop. John's lack of attention toward me and his constant business trips had worn me down. In the early days of our marriage, everything was so different. He would show me his love every chance he got, but over the past few years, the bond between us seemed to weaken. The emptiness growing inside me affected me in a way I had never felt before. Max seemed to sense this. His presence alleviated the loneliness inside me a little. His behavior became even more affectionate at that moment. First, he placed his paw on my knee, then leaned his head against me. The innocence in his eyes made me feel both happy and conflicted. I hugged him tighter and continued to love him. As time passed in the living room, Max's behavior started to surprise me. I had never seen him act this close before. At that moment my phone rang and it was John calling. After reminding me he was on a business trip, he said a few quick things and then hung up the phone abruptly. His tone was so cold that I felt a pain in my heart. That coldness only made the loneliness inside me grow stronger. I put the phone down on the table and turned back to Max. Max was trying to calm me down in some way. His eyes, filled with loyalty and the desire to spend time with me, seemed to form a bond inside me. I hadn't noticed this connection before, but now that I shared my loneliness with him, I felt it grow strangely stronger between us. As time passed, having him by my side made me forget much more than just my loneliness. That evening, the time we spent in the living room made me reflect. I realized that Max was not just a pet, but also a source of comfort for me. But these strange feelings rising inside me both scared and oddly attracted me. I thought about it for a long time before falling asleep that night. That night my thoughts kept me awake. Max's presence seemed to fill the emptiness growing inside me. His every movement reminded me of a warmth I had forgotten. For the first time in years I began to feel valuable. Max's loyalty and innocence deeply affected me. This bond felt like a reflection of my loneliness. The next morning when I woke up, Max was lying next to me. His calm breathing echoed in my ears like soothing music. At that moment, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel lonely even for a second. I realized I was looking at him in a way I never had before. Max reminded me what love and trust truly meant. As the days went by, our bond deepened. Max spent more time with me than ever, acting as if he could sense my mood. His intuitive behavior both surprised and delighted me. Every moment I spent alone at home, Max's company brought me an indescribable peace. One afternoon while lying on the couch reading a book, Max came over. He gently laid his head on my lap and closed his eyes. His innocent gesture created a wave of warmth inside me. His loyalty, trust, and unconditional love were bringing to the surface emotions I had suppressed for years. In that moment, I realized Max was not just a pet in my life. He was a source of comfort. During those days, John's constant absence from home deepened my feelings of loneliness. However, Max seemed like a savior, filling that emptiness. Having him by my side had become a kind of therapy for me. The love and loyalty in Max's eyes were stronger than what even a human could sometimes offer. One day we were playing together in the garden. The sun was shining brightly in the sky, and Max's energy was contagious. When I threw the ball to him, he quickly ran and brought it back. Even his simple actions were enough to make me smile. Max's role in my life was so significant that sometimes I thought of his presence as a blessing. By evening I was watching TV with Max in the living room. His relaxed demeanor and calmness gave me peace. At that moment I tried to make sense of the complex feelings I had inside. Max had become more than just a friend. He had become a bond that made me forget the absence of a family. As time passed, our connection grew even stronger. Max's instincts were incredible. It was as if he could sense when I was feeling down or lonely. His presence had become one of the most precious things in my life. One morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered into the house, I woke up. Max, as usual, was waiting by my bed. His loyal gaze gave me the motivation I needed to start the day. When I went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, Max followed me. Having him by my side at all times strangely brought me peace and security. That day I decided to go for a walk with him. The time we spent in the park felt like therapy for both of us. Max's energy broke the stillness inside me. His running around, playing with other dogs, and then looking back at me with a happy gaze created one of the most beautiful moments of my life. Max's presence made me feel like I had a friend who accepted me as I am. When we returned home I was tired but happy. Max, on the other hand, was still full of energy. He brought his toys and encouraged me to play. His liveliness always amazed me. In the evening we spent time together in the living room again. Max lay next to me and rested his head on my lap. When he closed his eyes, seeing the peaceful expression on his face deeply affected me. Over time, I realized more clearly that Max wasn't just a pet but a friend and a source of support. His presence not only eased my loneliness but also reminded me of how important love and attachment truly are. The time I spent with Max gradually erased the feeling of loneliness. Every morning, seeing him eagerly waiting for me made it easier to start my day. One day I received a call from John. He said his business trip would last longer than expected, and he wouldn't be back for a few more weeks. While the news saddened me, having Max by my side made it easier to get through the time ahead. During those days, Max's intuitive nature affected me more than ever. Whenever I felt down, his calm presence by my side offered me comfort. His unconditional love and loyalty created an indescribable sense of gratitude inside me. One evening it was raining outside. Max and I were sitting together under a blanket in the living room. An old movie was playing on the TV, but my attention was completely on Max. His innocent gaze and silence replaced the loneliness I had felt with a sense of peace. In that moment, I realized once again how big a place Max had in my life. As the days passed, Max's presence continued to bring color to my life. Every moment spent with him felt like therapy. Max had become not just a friend but also a teacher. What I learned from him was realizing that love and attachment have no boundaries. Everything changed when John came home. That day, with one sentence he said to me, I realized how differently my life was about to go. The bond between Max and me, built on his love and loyalty, had become something John had noticed. One evening we were alone in the room with Max for a long time. When John knocked on the door, He immediately noticed the change in my voice. It wasn't just a glance, it was the presence of a deep connection. Having Max by my side had always given me security, but John had started seeing our relationship with Max in a different light. "It's not right to be this close," he said. His words shocked me. After being a loyal wife for years, now my friendship with Max was being questioned, and that hurt. However, John's coldness only deepened the distance between us. A week later, John told me he wanted a divorce. "We just don't understand each other anymore," he said. When he made the decision, I felt a mix of shock and fear. But at the same time, having Max by my side gave me a different perspective. The feeling of loneliness no longer scared me as much. Max had become the only presence that made me feel valuable. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.